Sucker Punch did an amazing job with Ghost of Tsushima in tying the fictional events of the game with the actual Mongol invasion of Tsushima in the year 1274. This game is amazingly detailed, and today I wanted to go over 5 details that are just really cool that they took the time to add into the game. Anyway, before we start, make sure that if you do enjoy the video to leave it a nice, thick, and juicy like. And if you want more content like this, or if you enjoy any of the other content that I make on Assassin's Creed or Battlefield and you don't want to miss any of those videos, make sure you hit that sexy subscribe button right under the video. Thank you. So let's get into the first detail. Let's talk about the wind. Now this seems like just their kind of gimmicky way to help guide you through the world. Well, it's a little bit more than that. You see, the wind in the game is somewhat mystical. Some might even say divine, and divine wind definitely has a place in the Mongol-Japanese conflict, especially in the year 1274. You see, when the Mongols were trying to invade Japan, a divine wind was able to knock out the Mongolian fleet and send them running back to mainland China and Korea, where they were within their empire. This divine wind would become known as the kamikaze and would later be used in World War II as a form of suicide attack from pilots on warships. If you follow a lot of my Battlefield content, or if you're just interested in World War II in general, you probably know this, but the origins of it come with this divine wind. Thought that was a really cool detail. Now in this case, it's obviously not a typhoon that's just blowing through the island, but in a way, it is guiding Jin, who is a metaphorical typhoon, through taking down the Mongol horde. Next thing I want to talk about is combat stances. Now this is a really cool thing that they added to the game, and it not only is accurate to samurai style of combat, because they did have various stances that are represented in the game. Granted, the names of them, stone, water, wind, and moon, are not what the samurai actually called them. I'm not going to try to pronounce the names of them, but they did have actual stances that the ones in the game are based off of, and it's a really neat mechanic because it adds a ton of depth to the combat. It avoids the problem where a lot of games want to make you use various weapons. In this case, you're only using a katana, but you have it in numerous ways to actually use it, and that is thanks to these awesome stances. Now another neat little detail about these stances, not that this really has to do with the game, but if you're a Star Wars fan and you follow the series really closely, then you'll know that the Jedi actually use different lightsaber stances, and these are based directly off of the samurai stances that we see not only in this game but in real life. Thought that was a neat little tidbit there. The next thing I want to talk about is the end suffering mechanic. So a lot of times in games when you kill someone, they just die, but in Ghost of Tsushima sometimes you see one trying to crawl away and you can walk up, hit the square button, and end their suffering. And this actually has a basis in the real world as well. You see, there was a couple of reasons a samurai would do this, and I kind of would go through why Jin would be able to do this in game. Sometimes samurai would be paid by the amount of heads that they brought back from a certain campaign they were on. So they would take 1 or 2 heads from the battlefield, bring it back, get paid. That was it. Now, we don't see Jin doing this, and at this period in time, be it in the game or in reality, any samurai on Tsushima would not have had anyone to take heads to, nor would there have been many samurai left on the island to actually collect heads. So this is most likely not the reason. Obviously, we're not going around cutting their heads off or just stabbing them in the back, putting them out of their misery, and that does have a place in samurai combat and culture. It's mostly comes down to a sense of honor, but also respect for your opponent. You see, a lot of times back then, if a samurai got wounded, he could no longer perform his duty, and because of that he couldn't get paid, and it would just end up leading to him becoming poor and possibly starving to death one day. Another thing is, if that wound was to become gangrenous, he would obviously die a very slow and painful death, albeit quicker than starving, but still pretty bad. In that sense, they would just end each other's suffering, make it quick and honorable for both parties. Something you may have experienced many times already in Ghost of Tsushima is when you encounter Mongols in the open world, you can engage in a standoff. This is a 1v1 bout of swordsmanship, and Jin in this case can draw his sword and strike down one of the Mongols. I think you can unlock ability and take down multiple at once, but he'll strike one down and go and continue fighting with the rest of the Mongols that are standing around, and it's a really cool mechanic. But in reality, the Mongolians would not have fought in this way. You see, in the opening scene on the beach, we see how the Mongols actually would have engaged the samurai in this way. The Mongolians believed that the samurai sort of 1v1 best swordsmen from each army fighting each other was archaic and ridiculous, and the way we see Kublai Khan, the villain, throw wine on the samurai and then light him on fire before sending his hordes up the beaches is much more authentic to how the Mongolians would have handled a situation like that. 1v1 standoffs probably did not happen all that much during this period in time. Again, I'm not really a complete expert on this era, but based off the research I've done, this appears to be something that didn't happen very often with the Mongols. The next thing I want to talk about are historical characters, or at least the lack of historical characters. Now, some of the characters in the game appear to be loosely based off of the people who were there at the invasion of Tsushima, but they are not of the same name, of the same clan, and just in general, they did not exist. The first one I want to talk about is Lord Shimura's counterpart.
Your enemy is no match for you.
And that was a clan leader by the name of So Sukakuni. I'm not sure if I pronounced his name right, but he was the leader of Clan So. Now, he was killed in the initial attack on Tsushima. He was the guy that led around 80 samurai up against the Mongol invasion force that was estimated to be thousands and thousands of Mongol soldiers, along with Chinese and Korean conscripts within. It was a very large invasion force, and it was the equivalent of the 300 up against the Persians, except this was 80 samurai on a beach. Not quite the hot gates of Thermopylae, if you ask me, but still badass nonetheless. Their defense became famous because they gave the Mongols the most trouble between the invasion of Tsushima and the invasion of the Iki Islands that happened on the same day. And they put up quite the resistance, but again, they only had 80 samurai against thousands of invaders. They were outnumbered. They weren't going to last very long. But again, they put up a pretty strong defense. Now, the other person I want to talk about is Kublai Khan.
Kublai Khan!
The villain of the game. In-game, he claims to be the cousin of Kublai Khan and the grandson of Genghis Khan. Now, did Genghis Khan have a grandson named Khotan? Probably. That guy had tons of grandkids and kids, and he has a lot of descendants. I'm pretty sure 1/3 of the planet's population today is in some way related to Genghis Khan, if that tells you this guy was running through things. Likely there was a Kublai Khan somewhere, just not at the invasion of Tsushima, and not this type of guy. In all likelihood, Kublai Khan is just kind of a fictional version of Kublai Khan. I know some companies are getting a little iffy with representing actual historical characters in this way. Like Assassin's Creed has been kind of avoiding actual historical figures being Templars for quite a while now, and just kind of showing them being influenced by it, by people in the shadows. This game appears to be doing something similar with Kublai Khan. It's really just a metaphor for Kublai Khan. He's still a really good villain, and somewhat how I would imagine Kublai Khan being. Not a very nice guy, but very smart, very aware of what he's going into. The Khans were very, very good military leaders. I mean, there's a reason they conquered a large chunk of Europe and Asia. It was not by accident. These guys knew what they were doing, and they were very effective in combat. But anyway, that was my 5 awesome details in Ghost of Tsushima. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, remember to leave it a like. Don't forget to hit that sexy subscribe button down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.